7D Mark II. Hello everybody, and today I am reviewing the new 7D Mark II. Now, at first when it was first announced, I was actually quite skeptical that the 7D Mark II is actually going to be a great camera, mainly because I thought it had the same sensor as the 70D, it had the same resolution, but apparently not. It's a completely new sensor and it's packed with so many new awesome features that it's actually a huge beast. So it's actually a very, very awesome camera. It's not what I thought it would be. So in today's review, it will be split basically into three aspects. I'll be talking about the build of the camera, and then the performance of the camera, and then the features that the camera offers. So first of all, right off the bat, you will notice the extremely tough build. It's full magnesium alloy body, and it allegedly has even better sealing than the original 7D. Somebody did a teardown of the 7D Mark II online along with the original 7D, and they found that the 7D Mark II had a lot more rubber gaskets and sealing around all the edges. So it has a nice firm grip. The entire camera does have a bit of size and weight to it. It's quite heavy due to the full magnesium alloy body, and it's not a small camera at all. Compared to a 5D Mark III, it's only slightly smaller than the 5D Mark III. It's almost of the same size as the 5D. Slightly smaller. Now, it has dual card slots now. In the first version of the 7D, it only had one card slot, so now it has one CF card and one SD card. It now takes a new battery unit called the LPE6N. The LPE6N is basically exactly the same as the original LPE6, except this, the N version, packs 65 mAh more than the original LPE6. So this thing now has dual Digix 6 processors, which has a lot of processing power, so it makes this a very, very powerful beast. Now, if we take a look at the top panel, there's nothing much new to it, except you notice that the mode dial now has a mode dial lock. You have to press it down to turn it. The whole thing rotates about 180 degrees. There's 3 custom modes, and now you can see the icons on the mode dial actually are beveled. They're not just printed there, they're beveled, and they just look somewhat better. On the front, we have the 5D Mark III style depth of field preview button is now here, so you can press it with a ring finger. It's not down here anymore, it's at the front, like the 5D Mark III. On the side, we have 2 rubber flaps. One of these flaps opens sideways out, one of these open upwards. So we can see we have a mic jack here, and we finally have a headphone input, 3.5mm. We have the shutter release, and we have the PC sync port for flashes, HDMI out, and instead of the boring old USB 2, now it's a USB 3 port. This thing now supports USB 3. I can't get it close. So now let's take a look at the back of the camera. On the back of the camera, the layout has been changed slightly over the original 7D. Now you notice the back looks very much like a 5D Mark III. If I bring out the 5D again, see how much it resembles the 5D. This is the 5D, this is the 7D Mark II. So it's basically the exact same layout as the 5D Mark III. If you're a 5D Mark III user, you have no problem picking up the 7D Mark II and using it right out of the box. So compared to the original 7D, a few things have been changed. Now the menu and info button are directly below the on-off switch. Back then, it was in this row of playback icons. And the Q button, for once, it's back on top of the aperture dial. Back then, it was on the top left here. So you had to press it using two hands. Now you can just operate it using one hand. You can just hit the Q with your right hand. And you'll notice there is a new addition to the back panel. There is now a toggle lever here. It has a squishy, springy feeling to it. The toggle lever, basically it's a extra lever for you to assign a manual function to it. According to Canon, Canon calls it the AF area select lever. Now Canon probably intends for you to use it as the AF area selection toggle, but you can also assign a bunch of different manual functions to it. I think there's ISO, AE, and etc. So now we have a inner ring on the aperture dial. Unlike the original 7D, which the whole ring would rotate, now only the outer ring rotates and the inner ring stays put. However, if you press the inner ring, it actually flexes a little bit. However, the inner ring serves no purpose at all, except when it's used as the silent control pad in video recording mode. Apart from the silent control pad, it has no other features. You cannot use it as your arrow keys in the menus whatsoever. Nope. And thank God the set button doesn't rotate along with the aperture ring as you turn it. So that was driving a lot of people crazy in the original 7D. Now they fixed it in the 7D Mark II. Now let's get into performance. One of the best features of the 7D Mark II is the highly upgraded AF system. It now has 65 AF points. All of them are cross-type. Now that's 4 more total AF points compared to the 5D Mark III and the 1DX, and the 5D and the 1DX only have 41 cross-type AF points. On the 7D Mark II, all 65 are cross-type. Now it also features a new EOS ITR AF system. Basically, it's a upgraded AF sensor. So now when it's doing autofocus, it will take into account the distance, the color, and facial recognition data for auto AF point selection. You can disable the EOS ITR AF. If you disable it, it will use the traditional method of determining the subject to choose the AF point to put on using only the distance information. And Canon claims that this can be able to focus down to -3 EV, which is the equivalent of moonlight. That's pretty dark. Now, I've tried to use this in the dark. The focus will hunt a little bit, but eventually it'll somehow get it. Also depends on what lens you're using. So it's pretty good. It's a very good AF system. The -3 EV AF system was first introduced in the 6D, I think. So subject tracking with the AF system in this is phenomenal. The AF is incredibly responsive if used with any fast lenses and USM lenses, and you get a very high keeper rate. Shooting with this thing, it's a very, very great shooting experience. The shooting experience feels so great. For a start, you have a 10 FPS burst, and then after that, you have a huge buffer, which is 22 RAW files. You can take up to 22 RAW files. I didn't even bother to see how many JPEGs you can take. Probably more than you'll ever need. But with the RAW buffer, it's really great. However, it will take some time to clear out the buffer if you're using a very slow card. I was thinking if this were a full frame body, then this would definitely be in 1DX territory. Of course, being a crop, it has its advantages as well. For example, the crop factor will be appreciated by sports and wildlife photographers for the extra reach. So it's pretty great. So the shutter sound is actually very tamed compared to other Canon cameras. It sounds pretty low in amplitude and it's not too intrusive. Let's say if you compare it to something like a 5D Mark III, it's much more low profile. Of course, there's also the silent shooting mode, which is very, very silent as well. On top of that, there's also the silent live view shooting, which is as silent. Now, I forgot to mention, the viewfinder is simply beautiful to look through. It has a huge 1x magnification viewfinder, and it's a pentaprism, not a pentamirror, so it's very big and it's very, very bright. Now, image quality on the 7D Mark II has been greatly increased. Like I said, I thought it was the same sensor as the EOS 70D, so I expected similar image quality to the EOS 70D. However, apparently that's not the case. This is an improved sensor, and the image quality is greatly improved when it comes to low light. Now, in low ISO shootings, such as in bright daylight, you won't notice too much of a difference. However, in low light, you will notice that the 7D Mark II has significantly lesser noise at higher ISOs, which is always a great thing. Now, I'll show you some image samples of the EOS 70D, the 7D Mark II in low light conditions. Alright, so now we're in Adobe Lightroom and let's take a look at some test shots. Now the shots I'm about to show you were shot in RAW with zero luminance or chromatic noise reduction applied to them. So here is ISO 1600. Let's punch into 100% to get a clearer view.
Now you can definitely see a bit of noise, but this is actually pretty clean. It's definitely a usable shot at ISO 1600. Now let's go on to ISO 3200. At ISO 3200, you can see there's a bit more noise, but nonetheless still very usable. Now ISO 6400 is where things start to get noisy. You can see the especially the chromatic noise, and the luminous noise is increasing quite a lot as well, but still with some noise reduction, it's still rather salvageable. At ISO 12800, it starts to get really noisy. But then if you don't really mind the noisiness, or if you're going for a black and white photo, or if you're okay with applying a lot of noise reduction, then you might still get a few usable shots out at this sort of ISO. Now ISO 1600 is the highest native ISO on the 7D Mark II, slightly noisier than the 12800. And then here's the expanded ISO ranges, 25,600 and 51,200, which just look ridiculous. The amount of noise makes the shots completely unusable.
Now, from what I've seen, the 7D Mark II probably has the best low light performance among all the Canon APS-C sized cameras. Now let's go over to the features. The 7D Mark II is packed with a lot of features. It has so many new features, it's gonna take some time to go through them with you. Now, it has all the features you expect in a pro body, such as the AF configuration tool, the little stickman, the AF micro adjustments. It even has the HDR and multiple exposure mode, which was first introduced in the Canon 5D Mark III. Now take a look at all the new features. It has an improved dual pixel CMOS AF. The dual pixel CMOS AF was first seen in the EOS 70D. So now the 7D Mark II has a new and improved version. Now it isn't any faster, it's still as fast. It hasn't got an upgrade in speed. It's technically the same system, except now you can select to slow down the AF or to change the subject tracking parameters in video servo AF mode. So you can change the speed of the focus pull, and you can set whether to be very responsive or to stay locked on to a subject. The 7D Mark II also finally has an intervalometer. It's about time Canon put in an intervalometer in one of their DSLRs. So finally, 7D Mark II, I present you with Canon's first intervalometer packed camera. So you can set the intervalometer to take anywhere from 1 to 99 shots. And then if you need more than 99 shots, just set it past 99, that's 0. And once it's set to 0, it will take an unlimited number of shots until you stop it. Now the maximum interval for the intervalometer is 99 hours, 59 minutes and 59 seconds. Basically speaking, 100 hours minus 1 second. So it's probably more than you'll ever need. The indicator will flash once the intervalometer is activated while it's shooting. And then after it's done the set amount of shots, it will disable itself. However, if you were to stop it before it is done shooting, or if you've set it to unlimited, then the only way to stop it is to power off the camera. Whatever works, I guess, Canon. That's what's stated in the manual. I did not find another way to stop the intervalometer. One cool thing is you can actually take extra shots in between the intervals, which is pretty cool. However, if the buffer were to fill up midway, the intervalometer would stop automatically. Now, apart from the intervalometer, another new feature that's introduced is the bulb timer. Now, the bulb timer basically works in bulb mode, hence bulb timer, and you can actually set the time for the bulb exposure, so you don't need to hold the trigger down, or you don't need to use the wireless remote control. So this really means a lot to astrophotographers. It's a great feature to have. I don't know why Canon hasn't done this earlier. It took them this long to figure that out. So the maximum duration for the bulb timer is again 99 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. So that's a great feature. There's also an anti-flicker feature in the 7D Mark II. It's extremely effective. It works like a charm. Again, I wish actually all the other Canon DSLRs had this, because it's just so helpful when you're shooting under flickering lighting conditions. However, if the anti-flicker is active and it's actually detecting a potentially flickering light source and it's compensating for that, you will notice a slight decrease in burst speed. Let me show you what I mean. So here I have anti-flicker off, and I'm going to point it at a fluorescent light in the room. So the fluorescent light is a flickering light. So this is with anti-flicker off. So that's the standard 10 fps. Now if I enable anti-flicker, notice how the maximum burst speed actually drops. Now anti-flicker mode will actually also increase shutter lag when it is active. However, it's basically unnoticeable. It still feels very, very responsive. Now there's a display overlay for the anti-flicker inside the heads-up display in the viewfinder. Now if the overlay for the anti-flicker is enabled, then a flicker warning will show even if anti-flicker is disabled if it detects a potentially flickering light source. Of course, you can always disable the overlay. However, it'll just be there to warn you that it's actually flickering and your anti-flicker is not active. So the intervalometer, the bulb timer, and the anti-flicker features are very, very useful. Even 5D3 and 1DX users would probably wish their cameras had this feature. Personally, I actually wish my 5D Mark III actually had these features because they can come in very handy. They're very innovative and they are just so practical. Now, there is a new AF selection mode in the 7D Mark II, which is the large zone AF. Basically, it's a huge chunk of AF points, either all of them on the left, all of them in the center, or all of them in the right. So it's basically like a zone AF with only 3 zones, center, left, and right. Like always, you can always select which modes you want to enable in the menu for easier toggling between different AF modes. Now, the playback info display is also overhauled. Now it has a scrolling animation, so you can actually scroll down to see more info. You can see a ton of info, basically all of the metadata. You can even see what lens you shot it on, what focal length, etc, etc, your GPS coordinates if you have GPS enabled. And on the normal info screen, that means not the small one, it has a better overlay. Now you can actually see the ISO speed in the quick metadata preview mode. Now the viewfinder is also completely overhauled. Apart from being big and bright, there is also now a ton of information on your heads-up display. You can select which to show and which to hide in the menu. It now has a dedicated viewfinder leveling. On top of your viewfinder is a 2-axis level. It's not the same one as the one in the 70D, which wasn't very intuitive. It was very, very hard to read. It's not the one with the moving dots you had to toggle to enable. Nope, it's a completely new viewfinder leveling system that's completely it has an area of its own. It's not disturbed. It's always there, so you don't have to worry about having to toggle it to be able to see it. Now we have the metering bar on the right. It's usually on the bottom. Now the bottom is only used for the bracketing indicator. So your metering bar is on the top, on the right, not like conventional cameras which have it on the bottom. Now the heads-up display for the viewfinder, you can actually toggle it to show the grid, the shooting mode, the white balance, the drive mode, AF mode, metering mode, your image format, and even flicker detection. So you now can have a ton of information on your heads-up display. Now, if you have them all enabled, it can look quite cluttered. However, you can always disable them for a nice clean shooting experience if you prefer that. Now the GPS, you can see the GPS transceiver on the top here, a little bulb here. It doesn't have Wi-Fi. I don't know why. I totally prefer Wi-Fi over GPS. But anyway, Canon decided to put in GPS here. It has a GPS compass, very much like the compass on your smartphone, which you calibrate by rotating the camera around, which you will look totally ridiculous when doing that. So basically with the GPS, you can also log your GPS position at set intervals. And when you take a picture, it will actually put the GPS coordinates into the image metadata. So there's also a new custom function. Basically, it can maintain the same exposure when you're changing to a different lens with a different maximum exposure. You can set it to either change the ISO or the shutter speed to maintain the same exposure. Now you can also set the burst speed. For high-speed shooting, you can set it from 1 to 10 FPS, and for silent shooting, you can set it from 1 to 4 FPS. The 7D Mark II also supports multiple focusing screens now. So finally, we have a headphone jack. Finally, another Canon DSLR that's not the 5D Mark III that has the headphone jack. Now you can actually set the output levels of the headphone jack from within the camera menu. So you can set the levels of the headphone output. And now at last, finally, another feature that everyone's been waiting for Canon to put into their DSLRs, that's Full HD at 1080p. I don't know why it's taken them that long to figure this out. However, you can now shoot 1080p Full HD at 60 FPS with the 7D Mark II. However, you can only shoot it in IPB, you cannot shoot it in all I mode, it's the only option available. However, comparing it to 1080p at 24 FPS, there is no visible loss in video quality when you're shooting in 60 FPS. Now I'd love to show you some 60 FPS footage from the 7D Mark II. Unfortunately, I can't do that in this video because this video was shot, edited and exported in 24p. So if you want to see 60 FPS on the 7D Mark II, I'll have a reel in this video here. Just click on the video. I also have the link in the description below. Basically, I'll show you some sample shots I shot with the 7D Mark II at 60p. Now, for some reason, Servo AF, that's the Dual Pixel CMOS AF auto-focusing system, you cannot have the Servo AF enabled when you're shooting 1080p in 60 FPS. For some reason, I have no idea why, but you just can't do that, so it's manual focus only if you're shooting Full HD at 60p. Now there's also the silent control, like the ones we saw in the 5D Mark III. Now you can use it with this inner ring pad here. So this is your silent control pad. It serves no other purpose, only solely dedicated for silent control. So is the 7D Mark II worth buying? If you asked me, I'd say yes. It's almost half the price of a 5D Mark III, but it packs so much more features. In fact, a lot of the specifications on this are actually better than the 5D Mark III. It's a camera that's really versatile. It's pretty much very catered for sports and wildlife photographers, but it's also versatile enough to be a multi-purpose camera for every photographer out there. So if you're looking for a good APS-C size camera, in fact, look no further. This is the new king of APS-C. This is the best APS-C size camera in Canon's lineup. It's a great camera. It's a beast. The image quality is awesome. It's very great. So if you have the original 7D and you're considering to upgrade to the 7D Mark II, you might ask if it's worth to actually ditch your original 7D for the Mark II. Now, I'd say the Mark II is actually a very big update over the original 7D. So that is pretty much it, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions and comments, just post them in the comment section below. Let me know as well what are your opinions on the 7D Mark II. What do you think of it? Are you going to get one? Or do you own one already? So I will also have the written review on my blog. I'll have the link in the description below as well. So that is it, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.